So it's now 7 p.m. on October 22nd, 2019, and I will open the Board of Select Board meeting, Wellfleet Select Board meeting. We will begin with announcements, open session, and public comments. Public comments must be brief. The board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Are there any announcements or comments from the board?
Yes. We should thank Brita Tate, who has resigned from the Cultural Council, for her service on that committee.
Thank you, Brita.
And thank you, Britta. Okay, any from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Will Sullivan. I'm here to address the issue of the town purchase of the Oyster Flats.
Okay, hold on. I have to recuse. I need to step out. Hold on.
I think you should hear this, but
I
that's
can't until
that's
the
fine.
transaction is
That's
finished. Thank you.
Is that true for me too?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know if we weren't deliberating. I didn't.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay. I find it concerning that there has been little public discussion in recent weeks by this board of the status of the purchase of the land. As I had heard on the street some weeks ago, that there was a serious discrepancy in the acreage. From an article in the Provincetown Independent, I have learned that the acreage is 64% of what has been that was represented. That same article quotes the attorney for the seller, and one of the sellers indicate that they expect the sale to go through on the 28th of this month if the appraisal figure meets the purchase price. I would assume, though, that this board is not taking its direction from the seller. I feel this entire matter is being rushed through without the opportunity to know many of the details. I do not know what town council has advised about the acreage discrepancy and the need for a new town meeting vote on the subject. When the voters authorized to purchase in April, the acreage was given as 254, and now we know it to be only 162. I do not know what other issues may have been unearthed between now and then. In my professional life, I was a trustee from time to time, and in that capacity needed in some instances to acquire the consent of the beneficiaries. If the facts evolved, I again sought the approval of those beneficiaries before I plowed through with the transaction at hand. In this instance, I would view you, the Select Board, as the trustees and the voters as the beneficiaries. I hope that this board makes the appraisal and the survey available to the public, and that a new town meeting vote is taken. If the voters approve the purchase at that point, then I will feel that the process has been properly handled. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to answer that shortly because we're not supposed to have any deliberation. First of all, you said that word on the street. Never go by word on the street, okay? Second of all, we cannot comment on it or say anything because we are in negotiations, and they should be done by October 28th. What are we on? Yeah. Yep. So, and the town will be the second people to know. Select Board will know, and then we will announce it and put out the proper information. But it has been a long process. I get it. People are wondering, people are gossiping, but it's moving along. Thank you. Okay. Any other, Don, Mr. Demas? Oh, yeah. Helen.
Thank you. My name is Don Themis. I'm from South Wellfleet. At the last select board meeting, there was a discussion on the bike trail, and the discussion was primarily about voting to send a letter to the governor saying, "Put the brakes on. Let's get some more planning done." One of the things that came out of that meeting was that imminently there was going to be a meeting with the Select Board and the DRC and the Department of Transportation. That would be their opportunity to come back with their assessment of the need for a better plan and find out what's going on. I'd like to find out, did a meeting occur? Is there a meeting scheduled? When will we find out what the DRC is coming back to the town with in terms of an alternative plan or just a flat, we're going to do it anyway?
So I was the one who said that I would contact the DCR,
Yes.
and I have been away for 2 weeks, even during that time. So I'm going to be calling them or discussing with them to set up a talk sometime soon, according to their schedule.
And what will be forthcoming from that?
We'll see. We can't discuss or deliberate. This is just opening session.
Okay, then the question would be, would the Select Board be putting on the internet or whatever the results of that meeting?
So I would say we're not going to discuss or deliberate.
I understand
So, first of all, there's going to be a meeting with the DCR, and we'll take it from there. You'll find out. It'll be on our agenda. It'll be a public meeting. Yeah.
Janet?
So
Janet?
we're not going to discuss or deliberate, right?
That's right. I'm going
Okay.
to answer his question. What we do have, and I don't know a date of it yet, is that official type hearing with the DOT. That's for sure. And in other words, we had one already with the DCR. Okay? In any case, it would be a public meeting that anybody could attend and look out for it. And Janet told you the rest. In other words, the DCR is a separate issue. We don't know if they're going to come together, but we do know that the DOT is going to come for that hearing that they're kind of obligated to have.
Okay, is that a public hearing?
Yes.
Of course, yes.
Thank you.
And just one other comment, the forum board at its last meeting also discussed having a forum as well. So there's something else in the works as well.
The Wellfleet Forum.
Yeah, the Wellfleet Forum for additional public information on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Okay, anybody else from the audience? Moving on, we'll go to the extension of liquor license request by the Flying Fish Cafe. You want to come up to the microphone or to the chair just so the people at home can see you and state your name?
My name is Sarah Robin. I'm the owner of the Flying Fish, and I'm requesting a extension of my liquor license to facilitate the Holly Folly event brunch that we do. That's a community-based event.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, what's the date of that, Sarah?
So says here it's December 7th, Saturday.
Saturday, December 7th.
So do you want the extension just to cover you till the 7th of December?
Maybe just the 8th, just to be beyond the date.
Okay. For that kind of Christmas week in Wellfleet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to do anything else, but
Great. I'm glad you're doing it again. I
Yeah.
missed it last year, so.
And any other questions from the board?
No.
May I have a motion? Well, so wait a minute. Okay, now I'm looking at the two different things. Your letter is requesting your liquor license through, oh, all right, never mind.
But it says here
December 31st, yeah, okay.
We're just gonna make it
I was
till the
reading two
8th.
different things.
Yeah, yeah. I just want till the 8th.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
we're gonna,
so let's,
You don't have
yeah,
a Christmas
amend that.
party?
yeah.
Amend it.
Not this year.
Okay. So Kathleen, would you make a motion, please?
Janet?
Oh,
Yeah, we can do this. We can extend a seasonal pouring license up until January 15th, and so it's all good.
Thank you.
That's it.
I move to approve the extension of the liquor license for the Flying Fish Cafe through December 8th, 2019.
Second.
all in favor? Okay, thank you.
Guys, have a
Thank
great
you
night.
See you
for
there.
staying open.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we have appointments, board and committee appointments. Blanca Farrison is not here, I'm going to guess. Okay, any comments on this from the board?
I should have waited to have you tell me not to talk.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah.
you may.
I don't know who this person is, and I'm sure it's fine, but I would like to follow our tradition of having the person be here. Was this person through you to the staff, was this person notified?
As far as I knew they were.
Okay, who calls people?
Jean.
Okay, thank you.
So I would also like to add to that we always like, just to be sure, and that we also have some kind of a note or comment from the committee or department that the person is asking, or the board, I should say. So do we want to, does the rest of the board feel we want to
Yeah,
postpone
may
this?
we
or
not
just-
take action on this
Yes.
tonight?
Okay, fine. And then moving on to the planning board's appointment of David Rowell. Any comments or questions about that?
Yes?
Okay.
Thank you, David. You are fully trained. I served with you on the Zoning Board of Appeals for 3 years, and despite the fact that you wear earrings and a lot of pink, you were a stellar member of that board. And then you served on the planning board. So we need somebody else on the planning board, and I'm going to say it again. Thank you for applying.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, through you to Mr. Hort, do we know when the last meeting the planning board had? They haven't had a quorum.
They met like last week.
They met just recently.
Okay, so they,
They have met.
and David would be what, the 5th member or the 6th member?
I think he would be the 5th.
Oh,
Yeah.
5th, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Janet, are we going to ask for a comment from the planning board?
So I would really like all the committees to get in the habit of sending a comment or approval or a yay or nay. But since I think most people know David, I think
Yeah.
we're good to go, right?
Chair Reinhardt?
Yes.
Yeah, Alfred Picard personally dropped off his application, so I think that's kind of a testament
Okay.
that they're good to go with his appointment.
Okay.
And I will ask in the future that the boards and committees send something along.
A recommendation.
Yeah,
or-
that was
yeah.
a new comment.
May I say something about that briefly?
Yes.
I would, of course, always listen to that, but this is really our decision, and even if a board or committee didn't recommend somebody, that doesn't mean they wouldn't be good on it. And there can be personal interactions that can, result in a board or committee not recommending. So I would like to hear what a board or committee thinks, but I would certainly not base my vote on
Yeah,
it.
that
Right,
I think we all agree and already know that.
Right.
But especially when it's an unknown, or I think we've had one person where the board didn't even need anybody and they were applying. That was a couple of years ago. So that's why we just like to check with them, see that the person's up to date. But yes, so may I have a motion?
I have something to.
Oh, yep, go ahead.
I'd like to ask David a question.
Sure.
David, you sat at this table with me at Candidates Night, and I was really impressed by all your answers. But if I'm not being too personal, you're going to show up ready to you're going to be a good boy, right? Okay. No, your answers were brilliant that night, but you know what I'm talking about.
Okay. May I have a motion?
I move to appoint David Rowell to the Planning Board for a term to expire on June 30th, 2024.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
And now we move on to, I keep messing this up. Oh, no, we don't move on. Okay, approval of acting police chief's contract. As you may recall, we discussed this at our last meeting, but there is a change, an amendment in the contract, and that's been done. May I have any questions from the board?
So, what, change in the contract?
There was just, what was,
Was that what I
Yeah,
offered?
that's what you offered.
Okay, and there's some typos.
yeah,
In
that's
other
what it
words,
was, yeah. I know
And
what
then-
the typo is. You
And
don't have
then
to
there's
explain.
actually one amendment that is subtle, but I think meaningful. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down. It's under section, it's the last paragraph in section 1. So this was exactly what Chief Bissett was operating under, and I never actually read it. In other words, I wasn't in a
Okay,
situation.
so what's the amendment?
So in the second to last line, and of course I looked it up, in my opinion, we should never require or think that a public official should be able to preclude. Definition preclude is prevent from happening, fair enough, but it also means make impossible something. And I suggest that we amend this contract to read so as to avoid municipal liability exposure. In other words, avoid means they got to try. They should try to avoid it. They should try to not have it happen. But they're not required by this contract to make it impossible, because sometimes you just can't do that. And also to take out the word unusual. In other words, the services should always, whether it's an unusual situation or not, be provided in a highly professional manner and conducted so as to avoid municipal liability exposure. It shouldn't just be unusual. And why do I want to take unusual out, and then I'll be done, Janet? Because unusual is very subjective. And I think we just say, you know, best efforts, you've got to do what's obvious and professional, but it shouldn't only be in unusual circumstances. Those are the two words I'd like to change. And then there are typos.
Which you'll give to
Yeah, it's right here.
Courtney.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Hort, is this just a standard contract, or do you,
It's the same one that Chief Bissett had.
and so do you feel that any particular way about the suggestions that
I
Ms.
don't
Wilson
think
has
it
done?
matters one way or another. If it's the board's preference to use those words instead, I think that's just fine.
Yeah, I don't think it matters either. Mike?
I agree with Helen. I think the word preclude is too, I think it's something that could be easily overlooked, and it may not make a big difference in real world situations, but just technically I think Helen's right about the word preclude. And also, I don't understand why it needs to be only unusual circumstances.
Yeah.
So I just agree with Helen.
Well, if you ask me this phrase, it's fine with me, I agree with Helen, but this phrase, preclude unusual municipal liabilities, means that the police chief has the foresight or the awareness to be of what is going on with any activity that they're concerned with, and that would, and unusual being that unforeseen circumstances are. But it's fine with me to drop that.
May I make a motion?
Yes. Oh, Kathleen has something to
Sorry.
say.
I'd like to just say that, you know, I don't want to split hairs here, but these two words are pretty much used in legal contracts, okay? They're words that we might not use on a daily basis, but they're pretty usual for this type of contract. I see no point in changing them, but if you want to change them, I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes. please.
I don't think we should change legal language in a contract. We're not lawyers. I just don't. I think we should just approve the contract
As written.
as written, since it was vetted by the lawyer and was a contract previously. I don't think we should start wordsmithing it.
Janet, may I respond?
Yes, you may,
Um,
one time.
I'm going to say it again, because maybe, first of all, unusual struck me as something I hadn't read recently in any contracts. I've now read a lot of them, so have you, all of us. And a void is perfectly standard in a legal contract. And do we really want to have language that says a public official in the position of a police chief has to make something absolutely happen, which is the verb preclude is what that says. It's to make it impossible, and I don't think that's right.
Madam Chair?
That's
What-
not,
well, why
hold
don't you-
on, I'm not
sorry.
done. And unusual, once again, is subjective.
Okay, so you've already said that. Did you want to add anything?
Well, we didn't change it last time.
Yeah,
Well,
I have to say, so just because this could go back and forth of you explaining more, is I would like to approve the contract and refer this back to our town, back to council and see what they say. I mean, they do have the final word on all of our contracts, so, any other,
Yes, one short comment. We did not look at this before. I have never seen this contract, because the last time it was approved, I got back on the board in 2015. I didn't see it. Otherwise, I would have caught that.
Point taken, Helen, that the idea is that we don't have the legal expertise. This isn't a contract. I hear what you're saying. Mr. Hort can send it back to, or ask town council about it,
Madam Chair?
and then move on from there.
Point of order, can we call the question to approve the contract as written? And then see where the vote is, and if everyone
Yes.
wants to vote for the change, then we'll send it to the lawyer.
Yes. I think that would be the wise thing to do. Mike, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to point out that just because it was drafted by a lawyer doesn't mean that it's absolute, and lawyers disagree with each other all the time. So, language matters, and when you say preclude, the word actually matters legally. And I just looked up the definition. It means to make impossible. And I just think requiring someone to make something impossible, so in my opinion, we should amend it and then send it to legal to be reviewed to see if it's adequate. But either way, we can take a vote.
Yeah, I call the question to vote.
It's not a question.
Well, could we vote on the motion of the contract as written?
Yes, you can make a motion.
I move to approve the acting police chief contract and authorize the town administrator and select board to sign it.
Is there a second?
Second?
And I would like to say, and send it to town council and just check the language, please.
I was suggesting that we vote on it as written.
Yeah, I want to vote on it as written, but then still send it to town council afterwards,
Oh, okay.
okay? All right, we've had a second. All in favor? All opposed? Okay.
Question. So I assume we're not going to sign it until we hear back from town
Yeah.
council?
Yeah,
Okay, and then we'd have to vote on it again, if we needed to.
if we need to,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Thank you for your diligence, Helen. All right, So, discussion of and vote to change Wellfleet's method of counting votes from the wooden box to the tabulator. Do you guys want to come up? You know what, why don't you come up here, and so this way the TV camera can see you better. And even come up to the table, because this is a town of town importance. Yeah.
So
So good evening. Thanks for letting me.
And pull the mic closer, please.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me be here tonight. I'm Jennifer Conjo. I'm the acting town clerk, and this is Joel Bergeron. He is the co-owner and general manager for LHS Associates, who is the company that we would be purchasing an electronic tabulator from. Did everybody read the letter?
Yes.
Joel,
Question.
Joel,
Bergeron.
You want to know the name?
yeah,
Yeah,
can-
Joel Bergeron.
thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Kathleen.
Joel, how much does this equipment cost?
Oh, thank you. I'm marking it.
I actually reviewed the quote, and I believe it was 5,200.
And does it ever require any kind of servicing?
Yes, so it's an annual, what we typically do is it's an annual maintenance. The machine will come with a 2-year warranty, so that maintenance is covered for 2 years. After that, we recommend going on to our annual maintenance agreement. It's essentially an extended warranty, and that's $200 per year.
And I'm assuming a lot of other towns are using this at this point.
Yes, I just actually ran the numbers before I came down, and I believe we have 250, a little over 250 towns in Massachusetts using this.
Okay, well, maybe it's time for us to.
Well, and then 82% of the communities in Massachusetts are using some form of an electronic tabulator.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any feedback from the people who love the old hand crank method and are going to miss those wooden boxes?
I have talked to some people that do appreciate that, and other people, especially some of the election workers, would like to see an electronic tabulator.
We could just keep them around for show on Election Day for memories.
Well, I definitely would love to do something like put it out for the kids, put it on display, and so
Yeah.
it's not forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that showed you how I felt about it. Any questions from the board? Other questions from the board? Yes.
Are these hack-proof from a foreign power?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Oh,
I mean,
that was a joke.
yeah, okay.
You never know, though, but they are, right? They're as hacky as they
I
can be.
do want to point out that there's no internet or any connectivity
yeah.
or anything like that that you can connect to the internet. They're completely standalone units.
Okay.
Question.
I'm going to let Ms. Deitch go.
Yeah, thank you. I'm astounded to hear about this, since there's such a cry abroad in our country for paper ballots. Are we going to lose our paper ballots?
We won't lose paper ballots. It's only a method of what contains the ballot. So we'll have a paper ballot that'll be fed into a machine, and that machine will then tally the votes.
I see. So we'll have paper ballots,
Yes.
and then people will arrive in the evening and be tabbing to see if the paper ballots agree with the new machine?
No.
When I speak
No,
to that,
so
Joel.
the process, just to explain a little bit more clearly, as the voter comes in, you're still going to fill in the ballots
Yeah.
just like you would on a paper. Although instead of dropping them into a box this time, you would be just sliding them into the machine that will count the votes at that time.
Uh-huh.
And then at the end of the night, that machine will print out a results tape.
So it'll scan them, if
Yes.
that's the right word.
Correct.
I have a image so that we can pass it around.
Oh, great.
Janet?
Yes, Helen?
2 questions. So, and I appreciate the cover letter for this, which went into some detail. One of the things we learned from the letter written by our town clerk was that if there's a write-in, the machine somehow takes that, is able to compute that, let's say, and read the handwriting. Well, how do they compute that then?
So all the machines,
There's no X. Is that correct?
it's all the machine's doing is reading the ovals. So it detects that there's an oval in the write-in position, but it can't actually read the writing that's on the ballot. So when it does read that oval as a write-in, it'll divert it into a separate compartment, and those will all be taken out at the end of the night to be calculated as write-ins.
Okay. So, I'm worried about upkeep. We get a 2-year warranty. It does save time. Is there training involved?
Yep, with the whole package, and that's included in the price, there's 4 hours of training.
For
4 hours training for both clerk, warden, anybody involved in the process who wants to be there for that, to assist with that, as well as pre-election test assistance as well.
So one can call in and say, help us with this. Okay.
Janet?
Yes, Kathleen?
Irene?
Oh, Irene, yeah.
Isn't this rather an important decision for the town?
So this is,
Something for the selectmen to decide by yourselves?
so it's a piece of equipment for town hall. It's a capital purchase. It's going to have to go through town meeting? Does it have to go through
It's
town
already
meeting?
been through town meeting.
No.
Well, no, we already
Say that?
approved.
It was
Okay.
approved
Yeah.
as part of the capital improvement plan in 2015.
Yeah.
We have money set aside to cover it. So.
Yeah. So I know there's always a lot of fear involved with change, and there's certainly a lot of fear involved with voting. But literally, a computer, and again, it's, hand tallied votes can be tampered with
I
too.
understand.
So you're just putting the paper through, and it's going to just read the little black dots that you check off,
Understand.
and it'll tally it, rather than a human who could also make mistakes going, oh, this or that. So it's safe. It's safe.
Guaranteed. Guaranteed.
Well, as safely as anything can be guaranteed, that we're here right now. Who had their hand up? Mike.
Mike.
So, maybe I'm just nostalgic, but I also know that the last election we had 773 ballots. We've had a machine that has operated for almost 100 years and is still not obsolete. It doesn't need much servicing. It does require a lot of work, but there's something like this may be warranted for 2 years. In 5 years, maybe this is an obsolete machine. Do we have to now be purchasing computerized machines to count 700 ballots? I just think it's unnecessary, and I just feel like there's very few pieces of the town and parts of the election process that are still, I guess, unfettered. And it is some nostalgia. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to feed that old machine my ballot.
It's not a machine, it's a wooden box.
Sure,
Just crank.
with a crank.
So the crank.
That's a
So you
machine.
know that the crank also breaks a number of times. Have you ever been voting where they can't get the crank and it can't feed in? Have you
I've
ever
never
been
had
there?
that happen, but
Yeah,
I believe
I
that
have it
would,
happen pretty often.
that would happen. But what's to say this isn't going to start jamming during an
Well,
election?
so here's the big
Is
question.
anything?
Here's the big question. You're a volunteer. Do these people
Sure.
get paid who count? They get pizza at the end of the night,
They get paid.
Pizza and minimum wage.
very minimum wage. So
Getting out until 11 o'clock.
3 a.m. for the last presidential election. They were there until 3 a.m. And, yes, I guess they're getting paid, but I don't know what. And that's really what it comes down to, is that there's going to be some point where people aren't going to want to do that. And I know that that's just one of the elections that Jennifer mentions that went until 3 a.m. I know that they can go really long. And that's part of the problem. So if we don't have people willing to do that, that's going to be it. People already also complain about being like at town meeting and needing more help. So number one, it's the amount of time that people have to stay, And then the second thing is I don't know. I mean, it's modern, It's kind of the way things are going, and there's a lot of there's more human error than there is computer error. Yes, both have errors, but there's probably more human error. I mean, at 2 a.m. and you're looking at little check boxes and going, yep, I don't know how you guys do it, but
I've done it before.
yeah.
Ballot
Is
votes.
it easy?
No.
Yeah, you've got to really pay attention. Jennifer, I'm going to let you answer.
So I just wanted to speak to the general election in 2016. We had 2,300 ballots. So, and great
Yeah.
voter turnout.
Sure.
but that's a lot more to process than the local election that we had. And also, this machine is nearly 100% accurate. And you can't say that about humans at 3 o'clock in the morning that have been there all day. And for the election officials, we'll have to be there at 6 a.m. for the anything other than the local elections.
Justina?
Yeah, I understand nostalgia, but I think we owe it to our hardworking volunteers and staff to catch up with the times. If you said 85% of Massachusetts, and I mean, by the whole argument that the machine might go obsolete and so forth, we'd have typewriters at town hall, and so you can use a computer for a number of years. You don't have to replace it every time a new upgraded computer comes along. So I think that to service the whole nostalgia angle, it would be nice to have a display with the machine, like Jennifer said, maybe something for the kids. But we're not counting the votes and doing the work. And the people that are doing that labor have asked for an improvement that will make their lives easier. So I think it would be inconsiderate not to grant it, given the appropriation in 2015 passed unanimously. I think that our job is to recognize that vote and recognize the workers that have asked that their lives be made a bit easier.
Okay, Irene?
Yes, forgive me, but I think you're referring to nostalgia and change being difficult for certain groups of people is rather condescending. I think the issue of paper ballots is a current one, considering what's going on in the country. I would be very proud to have this community stand up and say we're going to have paper ballots. And I have been involved for many years with people staying up at night and having to count till 2 or 3 in the morning. And they do it with a sense of community and pride, and the complaints are issued with, but we did it. So I stand on that basis.
So Irene, do you understand there's still going to be paper ballots? Instead of cranking them and having a human count the paper ballots, there will be a computer counting the ballots.
I understand.
Okay. And it's
And
not
we trust these
condescending.
computers.
Anybody can be nostalgic. Nostalgia is a good thing.
No, I'll stop there. I think people in the community will let you know.
So this was already voted 2 years ago? How many years ago?
2015.
Yeah. So four years ago at town meeting, this was voted in, and now they're asking for our approval to approve the amount of this machine.
Almost everybody.
As far as I know, it's everybody on the Cape except for 2 towns. Truro and P-Town.
All right. Helen?
Couple of things. I would by no means support us having Chads counted in this town, ever. In other words, that kind of vote, I completely support always keeping paper ballots, so that isn't an issue now. But one of the sentences in here that really caught me was clerks from towns that have had to go through a recount audit, which the state does, report that their recount was 100% correct using a vote tabulator. How many towns was that? In other words, do you have a number for that?
Go ahead.
Are you asking how many recounts there have been with tabulators?
That have had that kind of percentage of accuracy.
I would say at least 90% of the towns have done.
No, forgive me.
I'm sorry.
Numbers.
Oh,
In other words,
I don't have exact
yeah,
numbers.
so 90% of the towns, given all the towns in Massachusetts, would be how many? Or were there other towns, municipalities counted in other... this sounds good to me. I just really don't like percentages because 50% of 2 is 1. You know what I mean? So when you produce these figures, do you base it on what? Just Massachusetts or everybody that's used your equipment, or what is this based on? How many towns have had this 100% after being audited?
I don't have that exact figure. If you're looking for an exact number, I can definitely get you something. But the number that I was basing that off, or we're basing that off of, was from all of the machines that we have, and we have the majority of New England.
And how many machines roughly is that? Ballpark is okay for me right now.
Including the previous iteration and this machine, about 4,000 or 5,000.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yep.
See, that's the kind of numbers I wanted to know. I am not at all nostalgic about these pieces of equipment we've been using, but I have an iPhone, and it's not that old, and I can't even buy a battery for it now. So what Mike said is spot on. I'm weighing that against the paragraph in the cover letter, and thank you again, that says these older pieces of equipment, the wooden ones that we've been using, are getting harder and harder to replace the parts. But I think that it's 6.5 of one, and it's a risk both ways. And I sometimes have to stay up very late doing town work or other work, and it's not fun, but it's also kind of a party. And the newspapers can wait until the next day. The town can wait until the next day. People can stay up late doing something once in a while, like once a year, for a big election, because usually there are not that many people voting. Usually it's around, around 800, 700, something like that. And I don't know if I want to switch yet. I think the day we hear that you really can't get a part, because, there's more than one of those wooden boxes here. In this case, there would only be one piece of this expensive equipment. Do you see what I mean? So if one of the wooden boxes jams, we've still got the other one, and sure, it slows things up a little bit, but not terribly.
Yeah, Janet,
I had my hand up first.
Please,
too.
yes,
I
please.
haven't said anything yet, please.
Yes, go ahead, Kathleen.
I want to end this conversation. There's too much. This issue goes back to our former town clerk, Joe Powers. Okay, let's retire the horse and buggy here and get with the 20th century and try this tabulator. If in 2 years we don't like it, we'll take out the box with the wooden crank and go back to that again. I'd like to call the motion, Janet.
Okay.
I move that the board votes in favor of purchasing one Dominion ImageCast precinct optical scan tabulator through LHS Associates, thereafter discontinuing the current voting system of a hand crank ballot box beginning in March 2020 until further notice.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair?
There's no need to keep the discussion going. We've had the discussion.
But I'm going to say that two people had their hands up after Kathleen made her motion. and
Well, she
I would have
called
liked-
for the vote.
Yes, but I would have liked to hear from the people who had their hands up. That's all I had to say.
Okay,
I withdraw my hand up.
okay.
I didn't, but we moved on.
We moved on. So,
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And
you very much.
here, where should this go?
You want this back? There's other piece of paper with
What,
it,
do
too.
you guys need that?
Do you guys,
The,
do you want the,
Courtney?
Courtney, do you guys
Have
want?
it.
You don't need all of these. I think there's just, I'll give you one, and you could pass this down to Jennifer.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay. Moving on to the future, electric vehicle charging station update.
So we, as you are aware, we received the electric vehicle charging stations as a donation. Originally, they were going to go to the Park Service, but the Park Service, these donations were being made across the country to National Park Services. The Seashore didn't have a good way to track the financial payments. So they asked the town of Wellfleet if we would like to have the donation that was being made. So we accepted it. It's now up and running behind Town Hall in the parking lot for anybody who wants to go and try and use it. It is 25 cents per 15 minutes that you are connected, or $1 an hour for when you're connected. So we wanted to have it in time for this summer, but Eversource didn't get us connected in time. So it probably will work out okay because we'll be able to monitor it and make sure it does what we want it to do. I'm toying around with the idea of, and I'll bring this back to you later, but if we charge $1 per hour for electricity for a hookup and it only cost us, say, 75 cents, I'm looking at coming back to you maybe and seeing if we could take that extra money that comes in from it and put it into create a revolving fund for climate change and start to have some funds available for that purpose. I think the tie-in between the two would be great, and I think it'd be nice to be able to start putting some money aside to be able to put some teeth into our reaction to climate change. So I'll bring that back to you at a later time.
Okay, and I know electric vehicles are getting more and more popular, and the chair of our Energy and Climate Change Committee swears that in 5 years everyone's going to be driving electric vehicles. So it's important to do this, and even though electricity uses some oil, it's not all the gasoline. So Helen, you had your hand up?
Yes. So in the effort to have this come more and more into use, I think what would be great would be next to our charging station to have a list of the other charging stations in Wellfleet that are available, so that if somebody's charging there and you can't do it, they can go to those other places. I know that PB Boulangerie has 2, and I imagine that there's some others.
So if you have an electric vehicle, and even if you don't have an electric vehicle, you just go on your phone, once you get a battery, and you type in EV charging stations, and a whole map comes up on your phone of the whole United States.
And you need an app for that, and not everybody wants to have apps. And
well, Helen, so
my
everybody
point,
who has an electric vehicle
so are you
has
saying
it.
That we shouldn't even put a list of these things up in a parking lot? Why not? Not everybody uses cell phones like that. I do. Not everybody I know does. And I think it would be courteous to have that provided. The idea that a simple sign, we do have a sign-making, whatever it is, machine at the DPW, the idea that that would even be controversial, I don't know. I'm being a little touchy.
Yeah. Okay. Courtney, you had a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say the sign is a good idea, but before these things were even up and running, we were getting calls from the company who hosts them saying, you're not connected, people are trying to use them. So people are well aware that they're there, and they do go online, and you could, of course, put other signs, but in the event that one day we have a bunch more, do we have to add a new line to the sign every time when there's a new connection? It's just a little point.
That's a good point.
So, I just forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Kathleen.
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort, this revolving fund, is it possible that, people could make donation to it for climate? There's a possibility that several grants we may be eligible for several grants coming up in the future, and they kind of asked for a matching grant from the town. So this would be a good place for that kind of thing to start?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
That's a great idea.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Carlson.
Not to drag this up, but it's significantly important to the community. Maybe we could even have a $1 donation box check off in the tax insert if that's allowable. If that's legal.
For
To
for
go into the
donation
revolving
to-
fund.
To a revolving fund.
We can do that on your tax bill. We could also put something on the website that anybody who wants to go could use their credit card to make a donation to the revolving fund for that. So all sorts of ideas that we could do this, but, you know, it's as Janet and I were talking about something, it's time for us to start doing rather than just talking about climate change.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Helen?
Yeah. So, however, if I was to be someone to donate to something like that, I would want something much more specific than revolving fund to address climate change. I would want to know a lot
Helen, we're
more.
going to discuss it, of course.
Don't interrupt, please.
That's a
through you-
given.
Through you. In other words, it's a good idea. And Janet and I and Kathleen were all at the Cape Cod Commission climate change thing. But we should hone in on certain specifics so that if people, you know, donated, they would know what it was for.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
it's just in the idea stage now, so I will bring it back to you and ask you for more input.
Okay.
End of discussion.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. That's exciting. And I will say that apps are free on the phone for where the electrical vehicle stations are. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You could put it on your phone even if you don't have an electric vehicle. You don't even need an app. What is it then?
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. Yeah. Yep. It's very,
But then, okay, good. So now that's public. We know.
okay, discussion of fee for long-term use of town-owned property. Anybody want to open up or comment on this?
So I'll just introduce this in that we originally it became under a topic for future discussion that we wanted to have this on a future agenda. I think we even need to step back away from it a little bit and say, okay, what is it that we really want to decide as far as use of town-owned property? So we were talking about two businesses that currently use town-owned property that don't pay anything for that use. Ideally, what we really want to do is treat everybody equally. So, you know, we have a restaurant that rents a parking lot from the town and pays a substantial amount of money. So when somebody else is using town-owned property, either for their dumpsters or for picnic tables or whatever, you know, should they also pay a certain amount for that? So we've got the mechanism for the use of town-owned property. We just have to start talking about what the fees are. And I think part of that conversation also, maybe this is for a working meeting at some point, but part of the conversation can also be if it's a nonprofit organization, do we treat them differently than a for-profit organization? Do we look at how much somebody makes on an event, deciding how much we're going to charge them for it? So there's all sorts of questions I think that you as a board are going to have to come up with a resolution for. So.
Helen?
So we've all reread our policy on this because that was very well done, this policy.
Our policy on using town property.
Use of town property and fees. And its most recent fee change notation is 2016. So I was around for that. Now, I reread it, and I thought it was really good. In other words, it gives us very clear ways, very clear criteria. And I'm not thinking about specific businesses at all, which may have jump-started another look to this. But really thinking about it, I feel that even if somebody is using town property in an ongoing way, year after year, that we should vet those just the same way we do everything else on a case-by-case basis. And that, having read this twice today, we don't have to change one word in here, because that kind of user, we can charge whatever we come up with in relation to who exactly they are and what exactly their use is. And I don't think we should put an exact number on it. I feel that for some of the people that use less frequently or only one time, an exact number is useful. But in this case, we shouldn't do one thing, because if this is excellent. This is an excellent document. It covers everything.
So do you have fees in mind?
just what we've got here. In other words, we're only talking about long-term use of town property here, fees. What I just said, no fees in mind. We get to see who it is that wants to use it, and by God, they shouldn't be using it without some kind of written agreement.
Right, we need a contract, just
Yes,
like
and-
everything else that we don't have, yeah.
And when we're doing that, when we're deliberating on it, we're going to take into their finances into account, all the things that are in this policy, and apply it specifically to them at that time, and give them a sunset date so that we can look at it again in X number of years. And that's all already allowed.
Mike?
Justina was first, actually.
I think it's a great policy as a starting point, but I think there's inconsistencies that Dan pointed out. And I think that business owners want consistency and predictability. And I think that there's quite a lot of grounds for the select board to review the situations Dan brought up. I think that when we are charging a small business such as a yoga instructor and a paddleboard instructor,
$100.
$250, $100, and we spend a fair amount of time talking about the conditions of that usage and how they should go up and down a hill and stuff. And then we turn around and we look at some other situations. They aren't being charged, or perhaps aren't being vetted as carefully. So I think that the policy that Helen's referring to is a great starting point, but I think we have a fiduciary responsibility to look at some of the scenarios Dan brought up.
Yes, so do we want to keep talking about this or have a work meeting? Because I think we need in this contract, we need like a map of what they're using and enumerate what is being used, where it is, what town, that's what I mean, a map of town property, how long they do use it. Is it on a yearly basis? Is it on a seasonal basis? So we have a lot of parameters to list. Mike had his hand up first.
I just want to go over I just want to read this one section that we have already the discretion, and if people are not, says, basic use fee per day per parcel between $0 and $1,000, depending on the application of the following criteria. The parcel as used in this document means a parcel shown in the town of Wellfleet. Basically, the policy that's here gives us the right to charge whatever we want. The fact that people are not applying for the use of town property and we're not reviewing those applications is the issue. It's if somebody's using town property and they haven't requested a use of town property and we haven't assessed a fee on it, that's the issue. The policy here gives us the latitude to charge whatever we deem the value of that property. And it's very specific, the policy here.
I'm sorry.
So I think it's more an issue of making sure that people who are using town property are applying for that use, and we are reviewing those applications.
Janet, just
So,
a quick question for Mike.
okay.
Did you say 1,000 a day?
Yeah.
So we could have Oyster Fest be paying $2,000.
Sure.
So I think the policy needs to be reviewed in terms of the proportion of what's being used versus what common sense would say perhaps is inadequate. I think that the policy is a really great starting point, but as a business person, I think the dollar amounts and other criteria need to be looked at.
Yeah, I think we have to even look at maintenance if something's being used yearly for long periods of time, maintenance. I mean, it's obvious that you clean up after yourselves, but then do people really clean up after themselves? Maintenance of whatever, the lawn, parking lot. So I think the other thing everybody has to think about is what fees do you want to charge? And that we can do at a work meeting or another meeting, unless you want to discuss it tonight. Yes?
That is all, as Mike said, as I already said, covered in a very specific way in what we've already got. What is a completely separate issue, and it's on my what can we meet on next agenda item is, and I asked for this a while ago, is to actually address the two users that have been using town property. But that's not on this agenda, and I suggest that what we do is simply reread this, all of us, and apply it. And there's nothing more we need than what's in here already. And we absolutely, in my opinion, should not have a fixed fee because we don't know who these people will be. We know in 2 cases, maybe, if they want to apply for it. And if they don't apply for it, and we don't get a contract with them, and they don't pay the fee, which they haven't been paying for years, they can't use town property. And we can do that all with what we've got
Right.
here.
Okay,
So, Janet,
yes.
may I suggest we table the rest of this discussion for a work meeting? We can all have a better sense of where we're going during a work meeting on what to charge and who we're
Yep.
looking at.
And the format.
I agree with Mike. I think the problem is that there are people that aren't coming to us for
Right.
use of town property, and it's just kind of gone that way on for a while. So it's time to see those folks and say, okay.
Yeah, and I think they know too. Mr. Felix?
Just a quick question. Do we know how many people actually are currently using town property who either don't have a contract in place or a use of town property
We have a good idea.
agreement?
Yeah,
Just how many, roughly?
for year-round, it's like 2 or 3 that I know of, unless somebody else knows of more.
I only know of 2.
Yeah, I was going to say 2.
I would say 3 because I think we have to look at Oyster Fest as well.
Did they fill out sorry, Madam Chair, did they fill out a use of town property form and come in front of the board?
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
So they are officially given permission to use town
Yeah, they
property.
have
This is
it,
an
yeah.
issue of people who are not. And if we want to charge Oyster Fest more money, that's an issue that is covered in this policy. I mean, we can do that. And I'm just curious what part of this policy is inadequate.
So I guess what I'll say again is that we just need to think about individually, we need to think about what the exact fee is we want to charge. It's in that policy, but what do we want to charge the different businesses? And if you have a number in mind, throw it out there. I wanted to discuss it with everybody. And that could be done in a work meeting, and we'll discuss the fees.
Or in the case of Oyster Quest, a quid pro quo. Maybe they're doing so much for the town or other great groups that we have a win-win open discussion with them about what they think is right. What it's Oyster Fest is a huge success and a huge benefit to the town. I just think that it's not been revisited since sort of was small, and now it's this large, wonderful festival. And I'd be curious to hear if they'd like some guidance from the town and hear what they're doing for us.
Do we review the application every year?
Yes.
So
they
then,
come before
isn't
us
that
for
our
Oyster Fest.
opportunity to adjust the amount that they pay?
And we've really never talked about that. So we've talked about talking about this, and now we're really at the point where we have to talk about it. There's been a couple of other things. And again, with somebody who's teaching classes at a beach, we ask them for insurance. We've never asked, it's got to be formalized. The whole thing has to be formalized and as a
agree.
contract. So
Yeah.
that's what so should we have a work meeting then?
Yes.
Everybody
Yes.
can make a work meeting that Courtney can set up.
I'm just not sure what the work meeting's about.
Well, it's about setting fees, because that's what we do on an individual basis, if that's what we want to do, or set a group fee. I mean, so in that paper, it says $0 to $1,000 a day.
Yeah, then it gives you criteria to
Right,
base
so we
that
have-
on 5 criteria.
So we have to set a fee. That's really the big issue. That's the big thing, is what fee do we want to set?
But it's based on the exclusivity and whatever of
Based
each
on a lot of
individual
things,
applicant.
yeah,
So
yeah.
but how can we set a fee?
Because, so this is what I think will happen. First of all, we need a contract, a signed contract. They need to acknowledge that they're using town property. We have nothing like that now. We need to make sure that they are insuring our town property for their liability. maintenance. I have written down at home other criteria, a map, like so that they know what property they're using.
Sure.
A lot of people are even unsure of who's who is what property and what they can do to that property. So we need that written down. And then we will discuss each, like somebody could even come before the town administrator or us, or we can review it ahead of time and discuss with ourselves and or the town administrator the fee that we feel is feasible.
Can we just send a letter out to people that we know are using town property and ask them to come before the board and apply to use that town
Well, I think
property
we
and then
have to-
determine the fee?
Yeah, so we have to be ready for that, and we have to have a form for them to sign. Yet there is the form that we give to the individual who's doing summertime classes or that one-day event for a wedding, something like that. But I think that this form has to be a little more inclusive. Maybe I'm wrong. I just think we need a little bit more from somebody who's using property. Helen?
We have a contract with the Beachcomber, which is a long-term.
Oh, that's the third one. Yeah, I knew there
Yeah,
was
but
three.
that's a long-term
Right.
use of town property.
Right.
This is continuous use, okay? It's not like the Oyster Fest. Oyster Fest
Right,
has to
we
come
know-
back
we know.
every time.
Yeah.
Well, I was addressing
Okay.
Justina's concern politely.
Yeah.
I would like not to have this in a work meeting. I would like to have this be a nice standard, fully videoed, because our last work meeting was not, meeting with, just a normal applicant coming in with contractual language, which I asked for a really long time ago when it all came out that there was nothing in writing.
Actually, you said that we have the present form is adequate. I
No.
think last time we
I'm
talked
talking-
about this.
No,
She's talking about the select board policy.
I'm talking about when the person who has long-term use down by the pier, the business, it came out in the meeting that there had been nothing written. I think this was like a year and a half or 2 years ago, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm surprised we don't have anything in writing, and that we should not have a work meeting to discuss what's already fully covered in this. We should have the specific user come before us and have some language to discuss with them, and have the town administrator, formulate something, negotiate with them, and then give it to us for homework, and then we act on it. I don't think this needs, if we all read this carefully, I don't think there's anything in here that's missing for long-term use. And we could say, we could have one sentence in here if you felt it necessary. I don't personally feel that it is. That would say, if it's continuous long-term use over X number of years, then the fee structure would be determined on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's what we've been saying.
But
So what
that's
I
just
want you guys to think
don't
about, I want you to think about, okay? I don't know how much more clear I can be on this. You need to think about, as a group, as an individual, what fees do you want to charge? Okay, that's number one. That's your homework. What fee do you want to charge? Based on their use and the amount of area, right? Based on their use.
But we don't know who the applicant is.
So
You mean generally?
So it may change. I don't know. So there are 3 people right now, 3 businesses that use town property. One of them has a contract with us. I've been saying for 2 years that we need to have a form and a contract, them acknowledging what they're using of town property, their responsibility for maintaining that property, their insurance. We always ask everybody for insurance. We do not have that now. We have the simple day form. As I said, maybe you don't want a map. I think it's a really good idea that we have a map, so it designates, here's the square footage, here is where I am in Wellfleet. So again, it sets it as to what we know and they know, and it's true, and something signed. And along with that signature, along with that contract, everybody here has to decide on what they feel is a fair fee.
So to answer what you said, that's clear, But what I think I'm looking at, I'm going to be humorous here, is it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, and it looks like a lease to me. Because what we have,
Right.
a lease is a whole different thing. It's not
So
something.
is a lease not a contract?
Hold on a minute. Yes, a contract would be good, but the leases we have, for example, with Press Hall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's the lease, we're looking at a lease for Lawrence Road. And I think there's another housing thing where there's a lease. I think there is. The point is, leases, of course you have to have all these things specified in fine detail, but it's a very different kind of agreement. And arguably, but we can talk about it more at this meeting if we need it, this would not be use of town property such as outlined in here. It would be a lease. And it would have, years, a number of years for the lease. It wouldn't be 99 years, in my opinion. It
Right.
shouldn't be. So anyway, I would like to look at it like that and not have this on use of town property when we're looking at as 10 years or 5 years. I would like it to be more like shellfish grants, where that we have cycles of review, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
Madam Chair?
Those are leases.
Yes.
I would really like to suggest that we have a work meeting. We've already had this agenda item once. There's stuff that I think needs to be talked through, and the format of the work meeting's more relaxed. Maybe a compromise with Helen could be that we have it taped, but the policy's not enough because here we are talking about it. And Oyster Fest has grown up, and I think they'd welcome a constructive dialogue with the town. I'd be curious to hear their thoughts. And I don't think that the work meetings are a dirty word. And so let's just get it in the work meeting and get it taped.
How does that sound to everybody?
I'm fine with it.
So when we have the work meeting, we need to think lease or contract. So long-term, do we want 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year? And Courtney's writing these down.
Yep.
We need to discuss insurance. There needs to be something to imply they have insurance. I would like to see a maintenance plan. I still want to see a map of what they're using. And anything else you guys can think of. You're going to have a lease at home. Mm-hmm.
Will we be singling out the two users?
No, this will be in it. So then, when we get this plan actually in place, then just like
They
anybody who
apply.
comes before us for use of alcohol or
A
wedding,
map.
yeah,
We're going to require the
yeah.
insurance.
check boxes, have them in
Gotcha.
front of us,
Okay.
and then they will certainly know what our suggested fee is, because that will be at the, just like with, again, a daily use or a marriage or something.
Right.
There's
Right.
that. So it'll be the same sort of format, but more inclusive. How does that sound to everyone?
May we also have in our homework, did we all get the policy?
I have it.
Yeah, yeah.
For our homework, to have the policy, make sure it's in our packet. And also a copy of the Pres Hall lease, which I have at home.
It's a 99-year lease.
No, here's my point. It has all the things. I would just like all of us to be able to look at what's in that kind
Okay.
of lease.
All right. Okay.
Because I have it at home, but the rest of us probably don't, Kathleen, okay? Just to take a look at what a lease
Fine,
looks like.
good. And there are, leases out there. Mike, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that it's different because it's a public-private partnership with a nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
It's not really the same as like a business using town property for financial reasons.
And that they have financed the
I'm
whole
not so
thing.
sure that this should be a lease situation anyways, because do we really want to give exclusive rights to that area as a town that's on Mayo Beach? I mean, that's a lease's exclusive rights.
Point of order. Are we going to cover this in a work meeting?
I guess so.
But this is all food for thought.
Good points.
Yeah.
And I would just add that businesses, as part of their business plan, need to know what their fees or lease is going to cost. So in that sense, on a year-to-year, basis,
Sure.
it would be good for them. Okay, anything else to be said about long-term use of town property? All right, moving along. Select Board reports?
Go ahead, Helen.
No, you can go first.
I'd rather you go ahead.
Okay. So I want to report that I went to the Sharks powwow, which was on the 17th, and which was very informative. And it was basically what we got in our reports on this. I went to the climate change powwow here that the Cape Cod Commission held, and I'm glad I did. I did research to learn more on our community host agreement policy. In other words, I got more information about it. I spoke to as an individual and got basically just to get the links for what they had for criteria for that. And I would like to have another agenda item in a normal meeting. It's fine, it won't take long, just to discuss the few new things that came up. Okay. And
that's under future discussion, right?
Yeah, but I'm reporting that's why I want that right now. And then the last thing was, I went to a comprehensive wastewater planning committee meeting, and it was great. There's a new member, and they seemed together, and there were a number of people in the audience, and that was good. And they discussed and decided to try for a meeting on November 14th with the DEP and during the day so that staff could be there, because their meeting the other night was at night and our health conservation agent can't be there. So I'm just putting that out there, and I'm glad I went. And I have to say that kind of meeting, in my opinion, should definitely be recorded, because there are important things that are shared, there's information that comes out, and there's a lot of people in the community that don't have enough information about it, so why don't we be proactive about it?
Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay, Kathleen?
I'm just going to report that the task force for 95 Lawrence Road is still working on the request for proposals. This is to select a developer to construct and manage no more than 40 units of rental family units on 6 acres of land at 95 Lawrence Road. It's a very detailed process that we're going through to make sure that we're putting this out to a developer, and without being too prescriptive, basically setting up a table of contents that we hope will attract a good developer for us.
Good. That's important. It's a hard job, and there was a meeting Dan and I went to. No one from the Housing Authority was there or anything, but it was with Secretary of Education and Housing Development, Keneally, and people from Truro, the Truro doing the Cloverleaf, Provincetown, Eastham, and the problems that even after the RFP goes out and you have the money is that there aren't contractors on the Cape that are capable of building these things, which is, just when you get all your ducks in a row, there aren't that many contractors that will even bid on it. So it's really a tough process, and we'll hope for the best. And
well, we do have 3 developers who we're targeting, but you've got to realize they're already in the queue with other projects.
Right, yeah.
So.
No, it's the whole process is difficult, and everyone in the state, and I will expand it to probably everyone in the country who's working on housing, has the same problems. It's really not easy. Okay, are you done?
Yeah.
Anybody else with reports? Okay, I will say that Justine and I went to the Cape Cod Selectmen's and Councilors Association meeting, and it was on transportation and the bridges, and just that the state, because our economy is doing well, the state has money, and the state wants to fix up our roads, our bridges, bike lanes, bike paths, what else did they say about transportation?
Well, specifically the Sagamore, right?
Yeah.
And as probably everyone knows, that it'll be more cost effective to replace it. So they have begun to work on numbers and timetables, and they did say that the federal funding, we have to compete for it, but the presentation was pretty detailed, and there was a pretty good turnout. So I don't remember every detail from it, but it's clear that they're fairly far along and committed to getting us that funding. The state's funding everything they can.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, town administrators report. Any comment, questions?
I think the biggest news here is, that the shark mitigation study was released and that information is out there. So I hope to come back to you as the board and decide, okay, what do we do next? So,
Excuse me, but are you going to then, before that, are you going to meet with the other stakeholders, Eastham, Truro, Seashore,
we meet
Orleans?
with them. We meet as a group on a regular basis.
You still do, yeah.
So, it's kind of, we will be doing that as to, okay, we look at what are we going to do as an Outer Cape community and what are we going to do as the community of Wellfleet.
Yeah.
So there's two ways to look at this. So.
Okay. I know everybody's anxious for the report, for what our decisions are.
Madam Chair?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Mr. Hort. Where did you take the police chief out to lunch for his retirement?
We went to the bookstore.
Good.
Perfect.
And you had oysters, of course, right?
Of course.
Okay, any other things, any topics for future discussion? Yeah. Kathleen?
Janet, you've spoken about this earlier, but I think it's imperative that we get a date with regard to the DCR for a public meeting. I'm hopeful that can happen in November. I'd like to also request in November, possibly our next select board meeting, that we invite Michelle Inslee from SPAT to give us a report and, a wrap-up of Oyster Fest. I understand that this particular event, 19 years in the running, was the largest one that we've ever done.
Wow.
People that were there Saturday said that you just couldn't find sidewalk to walk on. I have concerns with that.
Okay, well, let's just hold,
So that I think that if we invite them back, specifically, I'd like to see their emergency management plan.
Yeah.
My third topic is I'd like the town administrator to invite the task force for 95 Lawrence Road back much around the middle of November. I think by then we'll have wrapped up this RFP, and you could get a really solid update from that group as to where they're going forward. And, I say this now as we're going into the winter months and getting ready to, bone up for town meeting and budgets and hearing everybody. It's a great time of year to bring in all our committees and boards and kind of get updates from them. Going forward to spring town meeting, what are people working on? What are their concerns? We haven't seen a lot of people lately, but definitely 95 Lawrence Road has got some good stuff to report to you. So
Good.
Great.
And SPAT does come always before us and gives us a nice report, all that stuff. So that's a good thing. It might be more December than November, but I guess they'd have it all together. Helen?
Yeah, so I'd like an agenda item sooner rather than later so I can report to you so we can finish up this policy for marijuana. In other words, the few things that we don't know that didn't come up.
Okay, so send them into Courtney and
Well,
Dan.
I did send them to Dan already, but I can't send them to us.
Yeah.
because,
Yes, I said send them to
So let's
Courtney or
have,
Dan.
I
Yeah.
did that. So, or I sent them to Dan. And the other thing is, I would like to ask the recycling committee, and we can ask for this, to come before us and share ways in which we can clean up our garbage so we can start getting some decent money for it. In other words, wait, there are places in the world that if we clean up our garbage, there are places in the world where it's possible that we can make some money out of it. Let's not talk about it now, but let's ask them to give us a report about it.
So I would-
We've already
yeah.
done this. We did this with Mark Vincent and the DPW.
That's what we gotta do,
We heard
yeah.
about where our trash is going, where our recyclables are going. We've already done this. And
You misunderstand me.
So,
I'm
hold on,
asking-
so wait, stop, everybody. So first of all, this isn't a discussion, but
No.
really, we will be having department heads come up before us. There will be a department head meeting, hopefully soon, that we often have here. But along with the recycling committee, who does an amazing job, we also need a report from Mark Vincent on what he has learned, what the future of recycling is.
I agree with that, and I understand that we have heard about this, but it's already dated. And I
Right,
would,
so he-
let
just
me
did
finish,
this.
I'm not done. The recycling committee may know more about this and may know more about markets that are opening up with conditions that we don't know. So that was the second thing. And then I would like to have, and put it to rest or not, an executive session so we can finish up about the whole 3 Kendrick Avenue thing and either release those minutes or not. But we need to have a little more discussion about it before we can do that. So I would like to request that to be attached to the
Okay.
next executive session meeting. And then that's it for now.
Okay, so I would like for us to discuss, I would like us to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Yes.
Okay, it's time.
I
Well-
expressed an opinion. Yeah.
And also, I would like to ban Roundup. So, I would like those for future discussions.
We've already, you can't use.
I want to bring it up again.
Okay.
We're not discussing it, this is future
We've already
agenda
done
items. Okay? But we're not how do we get on this anyhow?
Future
You're right,
discussions?
we have done this.
Future discussions?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're on, right?
Yeah.
Future agenda. So that's it, we're not discussing it, I just want to bring that up. And, yep. And at some point, we're going to have a whole climate mitigation themed meeting. And so, Mike, what would you like to discuss?
I think we need to discuss having a social media policy, because I don't think we have one, and we have.
I do.
Courtney was
Do
doing
we?
it. Yeah.
Is it no? Like
Okay.
a social media policy in regards to the open meetings law, because it's not very clear and it's left to the own devices of the town. And there had been some issues come up in Provincetown with select board members on social media, and I think we need to have
I
a
thought,
policy dictating what we do and don't do on social media.
we don't have
I don't
that?
think we do.
we do. Yeah, we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's fine.
Yeah, it's under the select board policies on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, I wasn't aware of that, so I'm gonna look that up. All right,
Yep.
good enough.
Thumbs up.
Good
And
enough.
it's hard.
Yeah, I'm not clear on what the policies are, so.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Correspondence report? Minutes?
Can I move? Are we all good with the minutes?
Did everybody read the amended minutes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Inside them? Okay.
I
Good.
move that we approve the minutes of Monday, October 7th, 2019, as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. And now may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Seconded too, while we're at
Voting
it.
twice.